everybody, and welcome to today's mini episode of Attendance Bias. I am your host, Brian Weinstein. Today's guest is Brad Mislow from Atlanta, Georgia. Brad chose to talk about the version of 2001 from August 5th, 2018 in Atlanta, or more specifically, Alpharetta. Brad reached out to me on Twitter, and when he brought up this version of 2001, I was a little skeptical. I never heard anything about it. I never listened to it before, but he seemed pretty convinced that it was worth sharing. So I went back to the recording, and when I heard it, wow, I was incredibly impressed. I had heard some really great 2001s in my Phish going career, but this one, in about 8 minutes, is a really nice, tight little package. So before you hear too much from me, let's join Brad to talk about 2001 from August 5th, 2018 in Alpharetta. Brad Mislow, welcome to Attendance Bias. How are you doing this snowy day?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
For today's mini episode of Attendance Bias, you chose 2001 from August 5th, 2018 in Encore Park in Alpharetta, which I guess most people just know as Alpharetta, right?
Yeah. It's a suburb of Atlanta where Phish is kind of played for the last several years. It's like kind of that's their venue of choice for that area.
And I'm really excited to break it down because I had never heard this track before. I knew very little about 2018 in general. I saw a number of shows, but it doesn't stick out in my mind. But let's get right into it. We'll hear a little bit about you. Where are you from?
I'm actually from Atlanta, but I'm a New Yorker in the sense I've lived in New York for the last 21 years.
And is there anyone or anything you want to plug or mention before we get on to Phish?
Sure. I'll be a good brother and plug my sister's business in Atlanta. And for all you those in the area, she owns a cookie dough company called Batter Cookie Dough. And she has 2 locations, and it's a great pre or post show snack, and sells all kinds of cookie dough. And you can go to battercookiedough.com and check out her locations in Atlanta. And it's just amazingly tasty stuff. So there you go.
I have a feeling in the Venn diagram of Phish fans and people who love cookie dough, there's a very big center section.
Exactly. And you owe me one, Julie.
Let's get to know you a little bit, and let's get into the lightning round.
Attendance Bias Lightning Round.
When was your first Phish show?
July 26, 1991 in Athens, Georgia.
We'll have to have you back for a full episode to talk about that one.
Yeah.
And what was your last show?
The fall 19, December, I think 3rd, was it, in Philly? It was an invite only show. My friend had an extra one, and I hopped the train so fast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Your favorite song?
Maze.
Your favorite venue?
Oh, I would say the Garden, MSG.
If you had to choose, summer tour, fall tour, or a New Year's Eve run?
New Year's Eve run.
Indoor Phish or outdoor Phish?
Indoor, because I like the bouncing around the room sound. There you go.
Especially at the Garden.
Yes.
Any song that you're chasing?
I would love to see them do No Quarter. I love Led Zeppelin 2, and I've always loved their version, but I've never seen it.
Are there any songs that are chasing you that you can't seem to avoid?
Wow. Yeah. I think I get Tweezer a lot.
Lucky you.
I'm not complaining, but It's always when they fire it up, like, yep, of course.
Your favorite year of Phish?
2017, simply because of the Baker's Dozen and what that whole thing did for the band, and since then.
Yeah, I don't think any New Yorker would argue with that.
Right, which kind of leads into what the show that we're going to talk about, the jam we're talking about.
Oh, awesome. Okay. And finally, the weirdest thing you've ever seen at a Phish show?
I was actually at the Atlanta Roxy show when you can hear this in the release, the box set of At the Roxy, that all of a sudden they're in this monster jam and they start singing Rock and Roll All Night by Kiss because someone that they knew was dressed up like Gene Simmons and then jumped on stage. And then next thing you know, they were singing Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day. And I'm thinking, this was like in 93. So this was just, oh my, it was one of those, what's happening here kind of moments.
I remember having the tapes of those shows.
Yeah.
And I think Trey even goes, ladies and gentlemen, Gene Simmons.
Yep. That was just nuts. Yep. And for a second we were like, really?
Right.
Really?
After seeing Jay-Z in Brooklyn, anything is possible.
Right. Well, that was even, that was 11 years before.
Yeah.
Right.
Attendance Bias Lightning Round.
All right, so let's get into the context of the 2001 from today's show, again, which is August 5th, 2018. This was the last show of a 3-night run in Alpharetta in the summer of 2018. It was toward the end of the tour overall. And this was played right in the beginning of August in Georgia. I've only driven through Georgia. So as a native, I can't imagine what the heat was like in August.
Yeah, Atlanta in August is like the North in January. You just don't go out unless you have to. Driving is miserable because it's so hot. But I think that night was particularly like, it was, they start at night, so it was particularly it wasn't terrible. But I remember being extremely sweaty. Well, Phish concerts are sweaty events anyway. But yeah, I was there visiting some family, taking some time off from work, and of course, and then someone said, "Hey, you're going to see Phish." I said, "Of course." It was it was definitely, I knew what I was getting myself into, and it does help to have a fresh shirt in the car while on the way back, because you're gonna be soaking. That particular night, first of all, it was the first long tour they had of a section of the country since like 2 years before, because the Baker's Dozen was really a New York and a couple shows in the Midwest, and that was it. And so this was an anticipated tour in 2018 to reach out to the rest of the country. The show in Atlanta was Atlanta Alpharetta run was particularly strong. They played Tweezer, the show that the song is Chasing Me, on that Friday. So they didn't do a reprise, so that was coming at some point. I opted for the Sunday show. So I'm with my good friends, like most Phish concerts, they're, good buddy hangout, guy bonding kind of thing. And we actually end up getting the VIP seats from someone that we just met at a restaurant nearby hours before. Like, hey, my husband couldn't make it. Do you want these better seats? And we're like, yes. And we so now instead of like sitting like these other seats, we were now closer and getting drink service. So it was one of those, this is a great night.
I had that thought when I looked at the set list, because when I mentioned I hadn't listened to this show before, you introduced me to it. Mm-hmm. Just looking at the set list before pressing play, it's almost like it tells a story, because they open with Sexy Thing, they followed up with Tweezer Reprise, and I thought maybe I had to look back in the other set lists from this run to see when did they play Tweezer. Maybe from night 2 they did. And then they closed the second set with kind of a half-assed version of You Sexy Thing. And then, right. So what was going on there?
Okay, so the show was a good show. It wasn't apparently as explosive as like the Friday show, but because I remember Vulture was a little flubbed, but then they had some great bust outs like Most Events Aren't Planned. That was very strong.
I love that song.
And a great Bathtub. I think that was I think Bathtub was the closer, Bathtub Jen. And they came out of You Sexy Thing into that. So it was time for the encore, and they ended very strong. And so Trey comes out and with his megaphone. We knew we were getting a fee, and I think he said something about, I don't want to mess up the lyrics. But what does he do? He messes up the lyrics, and at one point says,
"Of course he does."
It says, "Fuck," through his megaphone, and it was a very, very funny moment. And and we didn't know what was going to happen from there. I mean, definitely he was in a good mood, and the band was going along with it. So then he just says, "Hey, let's sing a song you know all the lyrics to," and he goes, "You can sing along too." And he starts playing 2001, which of course has no lyrics.
So let me ask you, why did you pick this 2001 of all the jams you've ever seen since 1991?
Because this one I think is underrated in the sense that it was one of those, when I see Phish and they do something that blows me away, I'm like, this is why I need to see them again and again and again. This is why I'm a lifer. I'm in for like as much as I can. What they did in this particular encore was fantastic. So it's 2001, which of course, Page is rocking the Fender Rhodes and everyone is on point. Mike is on, the beat is strong. And then really it becomes, what are they going to do to, like, what is Trey going to take this jam? And he starts playing the riff to You Sexy Thing, which I think actually Mike might've started it. Or what
happens is in about a minute and a half in, because they just play, like you said, Trey says, all the words too.
Right.
Which I'm glad you explained, because I had no idea what was happening when I was listening. And around a minute and a half till about 40 seconds, they're just doing the regular, typical, great funky 2001. And Trey kicked in with You Sexy Thing with a tease, and Mike picks up on it immediately. immediately.
Right. Okay. That's right. That's what happened. And so that's happening, and of course the beat is still 2001 and Page is doing his great keyboard, riding the roads thing on that part. So you kind of have two songs in one. So then what does Trey do? He starts playing a muted version of Tweezer Reprise. And so you have the drums for 2001, whatever Page is doing. Mike's still holding the bass line, You Sexy Thing, and Trey is doing Tweezer. So you have this 3-song in one thing going on at one point. And at that point, I'm like, this is the best band in the world. How do they do this thing? Most bands have a hard time with just the one. They are now rocking 3 songs that define that show. You Sexy Thing, a Bust Out, which hadn't happened since the Baker's Dozen. A Tweezer, which would normally that would have been the Tweezer Reprise spot. So Trey puts in that place. And then, of course, 2001, which can go anywhere. And then it's a very quick jam. It ends. It's not a long one. It only goes for maybe maybe 5-6 minutes, but then brings back brings back You Sexy Thing, and then says You're All Such Sexy Things at the end.
Right.
And I think that was his his little his kiss to the crowd and kiss to the venue, and it's just it's a mic drop that was that the fact that they put 3 songs into one, and even though it wasn't the longest jam of the night, it wasn't the most surprising song choice, but how they did it just shows the genius of their musicianship and just what they can do.
The whole track is only about 10 minutes long, and that includes the kind of the crowd chatter at the very end. So it's really, like you said, like 8 minutes. And when you brought up the Tweezer Reprise, that surprised me a lot. Tweezer Reprise surprised me because the whole band joins in after Trey just begins it very quickly. And I was surprised that it's just listed as a tease because it's virtually a full-fledged version of the song.
It's a reprise surprise.
Yeah, it is. Well put.
And it just kind of like, I think that was his exclamation point at the end of the show and the whole run. So that was just like, wow, okay, I'll see them again. It was like you sold. Like, okay, sure, we flubbed Vulture and I messed up the lyrics to Fee, but you know what? This is who we, this is what else we can do. And everyone left, smiling and sweaty.
As we always do.
Right. And I'm really glad that, and it's I'm so used to New York area shows, but it was so nice going back to my roots,
Sure.
and it's not seen a show in Atlanta, that area, since 97. That was just, that's why I think that particular jam is just so, it was so interesting to witness.
So Brad Mislow from New York City by way of Atlanta. Thank you so much for coming on and introducing at least me and hopefully many listeners to 2001 from Alpharetta, August 5th, 2018. So before we go today, let's give your sister one more plug. You'll be the best brother, not just a good brother, but the best one. So tell us again about her. Yep, about her cookie dough place.
Batter cookie dough, as in batter up. It's 2 locations in Atlanta. One is downtown in Ponce City Market, if you know where that is, and one's in Buckhead. And anyone familiar with Atlanta knows that area. BatterCookieDough.com is the website. She has all kinds of flavors of cookie dough and milkshakes and ice cream, and even it's all there's no eggs in it. You're not going to die if you eat it. But she does she also all her cookie doughs are actually available in cookie form, in which she adds eggs to it because you don't want to bake cookies without eggs in it. So, and they're clearly labeled. So there's that. And it's really fun to get, you can take it to go, and good treat for any reason.
Brad, thanks again. I appreciate it. Thank you for being on Attendance Bias.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Brian.
And there you have it, a breakdown of 2001 from myself and Brad Mislow of Atlanta, Georgia. Again, if you haven't heard this version in full, I highly recommend going to phish.in, scrolling down to August 5th, 2018, and giving it a listen, if not 5 more. It's an 8-minute jam, but quite a bit packed into that little package. Next week on Attendance Bias, I'd like to welcome Alyssa Poland of the Funky Fox clothing shop on Etsy. Alyssa came on to talk about June 28th, 2019 in Camden. She tells all about her friends, who she went with, some of the musical highlights as usual, and really just gives us an overall look into her Funky Fox gift shop, as well as an overall look at Camden, a venue that I haven't been to since 2004. So ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for listening. I'd like to thank Brad Mislow for joining me today. I'd like to thank Phish.net for providing all the information we ever need, and Phish.in for providing a really superlative recording of the 2001 from today. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, please leave a rating and a review on your favorite podcast app of choice, or just spread the word by telling one person, text them, email them, however you want. Please just spread the word about the podcast. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next week on Attendance Bias.